Making conversations about independence count. What's new, Wendy Woo? Well, we found out that the show is in the top 10% of global podcasts. Now, that has got to be down to the fantastic guests, you, our listeners, and the fabulous reviews that we get online. Please do make sure that you click that link to leave us a review, because I love giving you shout-outs. In this episode, we're joined by David Smith, MBE, a young man who has never known his life any differently. He's a gold medalist Paralympian in Boccia. I had to ask him, what is Boccia? And of course, then he goes on and tells us all about it in this episode. He's an incredible young man who has really overcome lots of challenges, but he has a different perspective on things than maybe we would. So listen on, because this is a real treat of a conversation from a different viewpoint. Now, the first thing that we have to clear up, I think, is explain what is Boccia. I have to admit, I had to Google it.
Boccia is a ball-type game for people with severe disabilities. So if you imagine like pétanque or Boccia from France, very similar to that. Played on a hard floor indoors with fairly soft leather balls on a badminton court-sized area. And in terms of how the balls are propelled, it doesn't really matter. It's sort of as accessible as it possibly can be for obvious reasons. And yeah, we have 4 different classes. So we have BC 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I am a BC 1, which is someone which has severe cerebral palsy or a similar type disability. It means that I can throw the ball, but I'm unable to reach to the floor and pick up balls myself. I don't have particularly good core or balance, so I use an electric wheelchair to get around. Yeah, so I have a significant impairment, but not enough that means I can't throw. BC2 is slightly more able, so they might sometimes be in a manual wheelchair instead, a bit more better core, a bit more strength, but similar disability, so in terms of cerebral palsy or similar. And then BC3 are those which use ramps, so a bit like the chutes that you get in 10-pin bowling. Although
the rails, sort of thing, yeah.
Bit more complicated than that. Ours cost about $2,500 and made
I can imagine.
But the principle is the same, and they use them to propel the ball down and to throw the ball, as it were, with an assistant sort of lining the ramp up for them, obviously all under their instruction. And then BC4 are basically a mix of BC 1 and 2, but don't have cerebral type disability. So it could be an acquired disability or muscular dystrophy or spinal injury or any sort really. So we pretty much cover for all eventualities within our sport. And yeah, we are the most severely disabled athletes in the Paralympics. So without Boccia, there wouldn't be an outlet for us to compete in.
What got you into the sport then, David? I'm intrigued.
So I played when I was very young. So I actually started playing when I was about 6 or 7, but I was pretty hopeless because I threw sideways. I was under the impression at the time that was a good idea due to going to junior sports events in Stoke Mandeville and doing athletics-y type stuff, chucking things as far as possible, like cricket balls, for example. However, Boccia being a target game, not a throw it as far as you can game, yeah, it didn't make sense. And eventually, when I was about 10 or 11, I realised that I could actually throw forwards, and pointing at the target was a lot better at being accurate. So
it was kind of skill versus strength then. It's playing to your strengths in terms of using the target.
Yeah. And then once I realised that I could point and shoot, I then moved schools, and sport was a really big part of the school life. Our school was a bit like St Trinian's crossed with Hogwarts.
It sounds brilliant.
But for people with disabilities. So we used to rock up to sports events in a massive coach with people with massive wheelchairs. We'd bully everybody else on the sports field. We'd pick up all the medals. We'd go back in our coach as they're all going into their rubbish little minibuses, and we'd look down on them and wave at them as we went home.
Are you sure it wasn't magic like Hogwarts and a little bit of bullying like Trinians? Sounds fun.
There's definitely no magic involved, but there was a lot of competitiveness. We tended to win what we took part in. And it wasn't just boccia, it was all sorts of different sports, athletics, other Paralympic sort of sports within our sort of remit. So, and eventually I got quite good just through luck on anything else. I was training regularly at Trelaws and, I was playing against good opposition all the time and playing with good opposition all the time. And then we would go to competitions and obviously we'd go to regional championships and Trelaws would clean out. And then we'd all go up to Sheffield and to the nationals while the swimmers would go and do their swimming stuff. We would go and do our boccia stuff, all from the same coach, all in the same venue. The swimmers went straight down the corridor and we went right into the sports hall, and then come home. And then at the end of the day, we'd come back with all these people that either qualified for the British or, got to quarterfinals or whatever. Qualifying for the British was quite rare at that point in our group because it was just, obviously that was national championships. So, but I actually managed to do it in year 9. I was the only one to do it. And so my coach or my person that was running the boccia at the time basically borrowed a minibus from the back of the school grounds. I say borrowed. There was no forms to fill in at that point. He just nicked it, basically, shoved me in the back, got the head nurse to travel him because they were mates and shared the driving. We took a volunteer who was working at Trelaws because she lived in Birmingham back at the same time because it just all made sense. So we dropped her off in Birmingham and we'd carry on to Scotland to a lovely place called Easterhouse, which was not so lovely. And we got lost, found our way, and I ended up winning the British Championships. Like, no idea how. It just beat the UK captain at the time who was going to Athens a year later. I think he retired after that. And yeah.
Did it seem like a bit of a dream because it was all happening? Well, it shouldn't have been happening. To
be fair, I was just so young. I just, I was loving it.
Were you 14, 15?
14 at the time. And when I came back having won the British Championships, that was my election campaign for the head boy the next year. But I wasn't the only one. We had a sprinter called Ben Rushgrove who also went to the Beijing Paralympics. He was a year above me. And he had just been selected for GB Talent. We had hockey players who were really good. We had swimmers who were going to galas all over the country. So I was by no means the only, me winning the British Championships in boccia. I meid it was a big deal, and obviously I won the head boy thing for it. But actually, it wasn't as surprising as maybe it could have been. Like if I look back at it now, I think, wow, that's crazy. And obviously that led the pathway to the rest of my career. But it was weirdly normal at Trelaws. Like it was just like, yeah, okay, yeah, well done, good boy, carry on. Don't get ahead of yourself, don't get arrogant, win the next one, kind of thing. Like
yeah. Did you have to ever beat any of your friends?
Going back to Trelaws, and it was like going back to normal. Like, you win the British Championships on a weekend in Scotland, you come back to Trelaws and you're back doing your GCSEs and then you're taking part in hockey tournaments, and then the teacher's telling you off for cheating in boccia because you got ahead of yourself and you didn't read the rules properly and you threw 2 balls at once, which was against the rules at that point. And so I ended up losing that game. And so, I was brought back down to earth quite quickly. It wasn't sitting on it. Then I was doing head boy stuff. So I was meeting governors and all that sort of stuff. And I was starting to shake hands with, the bigwigs and going to these sort of different events. So that sort of got me a bit more experience of communicating with people under high pressure situations and stuff. So again, it was just winning the British was just part of it. Like it was just one of those things that we did, which was kind of weird, but it was a crazy environment.
I'm guessing was Beijing, that was 2008, was it, David?
Yeah, so 5 years later, I was going to a Paralympics, and basically after the British, everything became a whirlwind. I was, selected for England camps, going to friendly internationals. I wasn't on my own. There were other Trelaw people that had been selected for the England squad at that point. So we all kind of went in that journey together. One of my best mates was my roommate when we ever went on these trips, and we trained together as well at Trelaw. So again, I was around successful people. It was never myself and I. And like I said, there was another friend of mine was training for Beijing Paralympics at the same time as I was. So obviously different sport, but yeah, it was weirdly normal.
But you've got so many other challenges as well, haven't you? Just in terms of, wheelchair access, traveling, getting to and from, it's got to be a military mission to get you anywhere. But I guess you've traveled the world with what you've done.
Yeah, I've been all over the place, and we do it so often. It's just normal. And I was brought up in Trelaws where anything was not a problem. We were expected to plan. Like, they'd let us go, when I was 16, 17, they'd let me go to London on my own. Like, they'd let me, jump on a train, go to London. I went to see a friend who lived in Leicester, and I would get the train to London, then drive my chair across London to King's Cross, because I could do it faster than the taxis could get me across London. And then
I thought you were going to say that you'd memorise the A to Z for London or something. Then you could sideline as a taxi.
No. I choose. Obviously, when you're driving your chair, you can go as the crow flies, more or less. So I went across Charing Cross, the bridge, and then obviously through Charing Cross station, and then straight to King's Cross. And it was only about a mile or so, and my chair did 7.5 miles an hour, so I could do it in about 18.5 minutes through London, and then which was faster than the taxis, which meant I could catch the earlier connection train. I remember, ringing up the railway assistance guys to book someone to get me on the train at the other end, and them saying, "Do you want this train?" I'm like, "No, I'll get the one before." "How will you do that?" I said, "Well, I'll go between the stations quickly." "No, but there's no way of getting there like that." I'm like, "Trust me, I'll be there."
There's no stopping you, is there, David? There's really no stopping you.
So and then I was travelling up with my mate to Sheffield for Boccia camps. Obviously, again, leaving from Alton. Alton's a really awkward place because of the trains. I'd have to get a train to Woking and back. So I'd actually end up getting some guys from Trelaws on the bus to drop me off in Basingstoke, so I wouldn't have to do the dog leg. Then I'd meet up with my mate who used to be at Trelaws. He went to Southampton University, so we'd meet up in Basingstoke, and then we'd go up together on the train, totally on our own. Two disabled guys on opposite ends of the train, because that's how the train system works. And you'd hope that you didn't have to transfer in Birmingham, because he wasn't very good at the whole travel thing. So I'd have to kind of manage him and myself. So I'd be like, "Right, Ali, get off. Now we get off. All right, are you awake? Yep, get off." And he's like, "There's no one there. Put your feet in the door." "All right, cool. Are your feet in the door? Can the door close?" "No." "Excellent. Right, they'll come to you. Don't worry."
Not to cause another injury or anything, but
the doors have sensors on them, so that if you put your foot in the door, they can't close.
Yeah.
And then the train driver gets annoyed and eventually tells someone to get us off.
This is what's wonderful about talking to you, really, David, is that you see the world through your own eyes and everything is normal to you. Yet what you're describing is allowing me, an able-bodied person, and the listeners really, to see it through your eyes, and it's a completely different world. We wouldn't have to think half as hard as you have to, and yet you just embrace that as like just another adventure. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm a good problem solver, so it's kind of what I do.
Fair play to you. Applause in the audience from my camp. I ask everybody that comes on the show to think about one conversation that creates a pivotal moment for them. Usually leads to something remarkable happening, or a good realization for something. Now, I never know what any of my guests bring along. David, are you ready to share your pivotal moment with us?
Mine's quite hard, I think, because I can't really pinpoint one pivotal moment. Like, it all, as you probably know, with my life, I've probably given you a snippet of it. It just seems to, like, everything is sort of like little stepping stones, each leading to a new adventure. I think probably there's been so many different conversations I've had over the years. I think in terms of like independence, I think I had a really good conversation with someone, but when I was at obviously at Trelaws again, I was
shout out for Trelaws.
Yeah, no coincidence. Yeah, one of the house managers, a guy called Ian Scott, really wise guy. Yeah, he was so calm. Like he was like calmness personified. Like even though he was a manager and he'd have to tell people off, he just oozed respect. Like some people you just kind of just respect. He was just one of those people that you didn't even have to know the guy and you'd respect him. And he said to me one day, because we were talking about independence and living independently and whatever, and he said to me, "Dave," because I'd said something stupid like, "Well, surely to be independent you have to do everything yourself." And he said, "Well, what about if you do everything yourself and it takes you 4 hours to get dressed and you then miss your work appointment and you end up doing nothing for the rest of the day? How independent is that? Whereas if you'd have asked someone to help you, you'd have done it in 20 minutes. You'd be up, you'd be going to work, you'd be earning a living, you'd be coming home." who is the more independent person, the person that can ask for help, get it done, and then move on to the next thing, or the person that struggles to try and do it themselves.
Ian is a very wise man.
Yeah.
So what did you say to him then, Dave?
I didn't say anything. He stumped me. You either bow in his reverence or you just go. But that kind of stuck with me, those sort of philosophies of, being really pragmatic in your approach to life.
Independence doesn't mean that you have to be alone.
That was probably the one thing that stuck with me. And there's many different sort of conversations I've had. I've probably had a couple since lockdown, to be fair, as well. We're just sort of different, bringing out different mindsets. I think the thing I'm learning lately is that my way isn't necessarily the best way for everybody. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own unique assets to bring to the table. Because my way works for me doesn't mean it will work for everybody, and that's okay. As long as people embrace their own skills and maximize what they've got. All I can ask for is they do the work because I'm a team captain in the Boccia squad, so I'm trying to lead my team obviously to pick up a medal in Tokyo, and I've got to bring them with me. And obviously, being a successful player, there's a lot. It's almost like inferred that obviously they should do everything you're doing because you're the successful one. But actually, my mind thinking, well, actually no, because they're not me.
Yes, you still need to learn from everybody else.
So actually, they need to learn from themselves what works for them. I just point them. I'm just a signpost. I can share my story. I can say, no, I've been down that path. It's a ditch. Mind
the hedge.
Yeah, but equally, I can say that that's the destination. This is how I got to that destination. But it's, there are other routes you can take.
It's embracing everybody's uniqueness, really, isn't it? That the journey is going to be different for everybody. Getting from A to Z may sound the same for everybody, but it's all those letters from B to Y in between, isn't it? That's going to make it a different story.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I've been learning over lockdown, really being able to, probably that's been the benefit for lockdown for me, has been able to just take a step back and kind of go, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. And I don't need all the answers.
That comes back to what you were saying about your conversation with Ian, though, really, isn't it? Is that, independence is about being able to ask for help and for advice and for support.
Yeah. Hey.
Dave, for somebody so young, you are very wise.
I've been surrounded by good people. It helps.
It does make a massive difference, doesn't it? So you're busy training now for Tokyo, which has been delayed this year.
It's supposed to be last year, and then they're moving it to this summer. And so, it's not a massive deal. It means that Paris is going to be a bit closer. But it should be good. We touch wood, everything's going ahead as normal. Obviously, there's going to be different restrictions and different protocols based on COVID and stuff, which is fine. But the actual games itself are going ahead as far as we know. So we just train for that, and I'm actually I'm in the best place I've ever been in terms of mentally and sort of physically. Even though I've had lockdown and not been training for over a year, and I had the competition for over a year, so I think the time off has actually done me a favour. So it's interesting. Not many people can sort of spend a year off and be stronger than they were when they left, but I think I've managed to do that, so it's pretty cool.
Sometimes it's important to take that step back. It does actually strengthen you, doesn't it? It helps those roots grow stronger as well than constantly, being busy and being on the move. Well, Dave, wish you all the best in Tokyo. Do let me know how you get on, won't you? And I will share with all the listeners after the event. If anybody wants to pick up the conversation with you after listening to your story today, where's the best place for them to find you?
So I got a YouTube channel, so I do that quite a lot in terms of sort of updates of my story and stuff. But probably the best place to catch me is probably Instagram, in terms of you can see me sort of live every day, sort of posting and stuff. And welcome to grab me. So what am I at? I'm at Smithy2389 on Instagram. Feel free to follow me, and I'll keep everybody up to date with what's going on.
Brilliant, Dave. Well, I'll make sure that the details go in the show notes so that it's easy for everybody to find you. It's been wonderful to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing that insight into Boccia, into independence, and I wish you all the best in Tokyo. Thank you ever so much, Dave. We'll see you again soon. And for the listeners, make sure you hit up the channel, all the W's, making conversations count. Studio/podcast. All the platforms are there. Hit the button so you don't miss an episode. We've got some fabulous guests joining us. Preparations are underway for the Japanese Paralympians to go and fight for their medals again this year. I know David is busy with his training, and we're going to be rooting for you all the way and wish you all the luck in the world on that Boccia pitch. David, is it a pitch? You'll have to tell us how you get on. In the meantime, if you want to take up a read for your summer break, do check out my Making Conversations Count best-selling book. The link's in all the comments, and you'll find out how to improve your conversations. Happy to always grab a chinwag, and those power-up sessions are going really well. Until next time, thanks for listening. Next week, we have Graham Nash joining us, and he's going to be making conversations about family count.
It's almost like taking the passion that people have got for the business, but bottling it up and using it sparingly where you need it to improve things.